The new season of My Hero Academia has been quite eventful. So far, we've seen Midoriya get to participate in a hero work study, got introduced to a new villain who seems to be throwing a wrench into things, and even got to see Kirishima be a hero and protect innocent people. Probably the best scene of this season so far. I am going to hold out a little bit longer on the perfect character design of Kirishima video because I think he's not quite done with his little character arc, and I really want to see what that little flashback means before I make it. Either way, since the beginning of the season, a new question has been brought to the forefront of My Hero Academia. Is Midoriya truly worthy of One for All? This question isn't actually new to the series. There has been a few times where this has been brought up, in particular the first arc of the season, but usually this question is dropped pretty quickly. However, the introduction of Mirio complicates things a bit. Mirio is actually the original person that All Might was planning on giving One for All to. Granted, he hadn't met Mirio yet, but so far, everyone who knew the situation had been banking on Mirio being the best successor to One for All. And as we get to meet Mirio, that becomes a major part of Midoriya's dilemma. Mirio is honestly a great hero. He has a very unique quirk that he's able to use to its fullest extent. He's got a super sharp mind and is able to think quickly. And most of all, he's constantly wearing this huge smile and is trying his best to save everyone. I mean, for God's sakes, his hero name is Lemillion because he dreams of one day saving 1,000,000 people. Not to mention, there's one other huge factor separating him from Midoriya. He actually has his own quirk. And not just that, a quirk that would synergize incredibly well with One for All. Mirio's quirk is permeation. He's able to flow through solid objects and can reappear by turning his quirk off. Imagine someone with All Might strength who can essentially teleport and that you can't hit back. That would have been Mirio. So with the introduction of Mirio, the question changes a bit. It's less so if Midoriya is worthy of One for All, and more so if Midoriya deserves One for All over Mirio. Hence the introduction of Night-Eye. Night-Eye is All Might's old sidekick, and also probably one of his biggest fans. However, after Night-Eye used his quirk on All Might, which, by the way, lets him see another person's future, he sees All Might's gruesome death. So naturally, Night-Eye tries to get him to quit being a hero while he's still relatively healthy. But All Might refuses. This ends both their friendship and their partnership. So Midoriya decides to try and land a work study with Night-Eye after Gran Torino suggests it, and we get to see their first meeting, which ends up basically with Night-Eye telling Midoriya that he was All Might's biggest mistake. Night-Eye believes that Midoriya is a less worthy successor than Mirio, and tells Midoriya that very bluntly. However, after a bit of a fight, Night-Eye gives in a little bit and decides to take Midoriya up on the work study, despite him still thinking that Mirio is a more fit successor. However, as some events in the show begin to reveal, I think Night-Eye is incorrect. Let's start off with the most obvious event: Midoriya's first interaction with Overhaul and his daughter Eri. Midoriya and Mirio were both just briefed by Night-Eye to not draw suspicion from Overhaul since Night-Eye was investigating him privately and doesn't want to tip off Overhaul. However, in this interaction, something strange happens. Eri runs up to Midoriya and begs him to take her away. And here is where I draw a very distinctive line between Midoriya and Mirio. Midoriya turns to Overhaul and is prepared to either fight or run off with Eri, whereas Mirio tries to play it off like it's no big deal and follows Night-Eye's orders. After a bit of bickering, Eri runs back to Overhaul after he subtly threatens to kill Midoriya and Mirio, and they are both left having let a small girl go back to her abuser. This scene is pretty messed up and has some major consequences down the line. The ironic truth is that Mirio isn't reckless enough. I know that sounds terrible, but hear me out. That's kind of the point of being All Might. It's this idea that he's this invulnerable hero that would have never let Eri go back. And Midoriya was more than willing to put his life on the line for that kind of risk. This is the ideal of being the ultimate hero. Yet, Mirio put Night-Eye's plans above all else, and it ended up backfiring. Later on in this arc, we learn that Overhaul's plans requires him to continuously deconstruct and reconstruct Eri, which is horrible, but also the crux of his entire plan. If Midoriya had just grabbed Eri and ran away with her, most likely he would have gotten away since Overhaul's quirk isn't good for mobility, and bam, Overhaul's entire plan is dead on arrival. It's this massive failure on the part of Mirio that ensures that the villains were able to proceed with their plans unaffected, but also that a small child is going to be continuously tortured because of him. And later on, when we see him realize this fact, he's devastated by it. This is the essential difference between Midoriya and Mirio. Midoriya truly has All Might's ideals etched into his heart, whereas Miorio's ideals are a little bit closer to Night Eye's. Both are very similar to each other, but one is more concerned for planning while the other is more idealistic. Granted, usually planning ahead is always the way to go, but when you're representing the very idea of being a hero, you have to be perceived as invincible. Someone who will run recklessly into situations where they should have no chances of winning, but come out on top. I mean, look at the very reason why All Might chose Midoriya. All Might saw Midoriya run in recklessly to save Bakugo despite not having a quirk. He saw this reckless, idealistic soul inside of Midoriya and made what I think to be the right call. He made Midoriya the next symbol of peace. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make Mirio look bad. He is an amazing character who I think will actually end up learning a thing or two from Midoriya. He's an awesome person who would have made a solid follow-up to All Might as the next #1 hero. But I think when it comes down to base beliefs, he is less idealistic and more realistic than Midoriya, making him a great hero, but a less convincing symbol of peace. Hence the reason Night Eye favors him over Midoriya. Midoriya is almost identical to All Might, including all of his flaws, whereas I think Mirio is closer to Night Eye. Still a fantastic hero that will gladly put their life on the line, but lacking in the ability to ignore all of their orders and just go with their gut. That is why I think it's clear that Midoriya deserves One for All more than Mirio. Thank you guys so much for watching. My Hero Academia is finally picking back up again, and I am properly hyped for it. Either way, a huge thank you to my patrons. You guys are my heroes. Speaking of which, I made some major changes to my Patreon for those of you who are interested. And yes, it is finally My Hero Academia themed. If you want to check it out and become one of my heroes, feel free to check the description. Make sure you guys share, like, comment, and subscribe. This is Manime Matt. Make sure you guys say man and go watch that goddamned anime.